I'm Micah. I am the young adult librarian here in the library. And I'm here with Deanna Shelby. I'm saying your name correctly, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
And she is, as most of you know, faculty at the local university here, Moraine Valley Community College. And she's also a young adult, recently a young adult author. She's written The Humchis, Journey Into Kusimak, which is the first of a series or a trilogy?
A trilogy. Yes.
And she's also written, or is writing?
I'm currently almost done with part 2 of the trilogy, and also a collection of real-life horror stories that's coming out in October about serial killers, sociopaths, things like that. So real horror about the real monsters in our lives.
So we have this book already in our collection here. You can check it out here, or you can buy a copy from her, obviously recommended, and get it signed today. Just so everyone who doesn't know or isn't aware already, we'll be using the term YA, or young adult, a lot. That loosely is defined by a age group of readers that falls somewhere between adolescent and adult, and historically have fallen through the cracks of publishing industry and authors themselves, and has become quite popularized largely nowadays by the new movies coming out, Hunger Games, and Divergent, and the John Green novel that just was released as well, Fault in Our Stars. So, without further ado, tell us about this book.
So the Humchis was actually a monster that my aunt used to make up when we were little to keep us scared so we wouldn't misbehave. And I always remembered this monster and decided I would like to write my own Humchis stories. All I remembered from the past was that they scared me. I never really remembered a story, so I decided to write my own as a side project from my work and my own schooling, and it just took off from there. It turned from a short story to a shorter novel, and I decided to make it a trilogy because of the way I ended the first book on a cliffhanger, just to see if people would like it, to see if after they finished it they wanted to know what happened next. I got some great reviews from it, and so I did decide to continue with the trilogy, and part 2 will be completed before the end of September. It was supposed to be completed at the end of August, but I am lengthening it a little bit as well, so I'm just doing some finishing touches on it as well. It follows 3 siblings, 2 of which are trying to get their younger brother back, who was kidnapped and taken into the Humchi kingdom, Kusimak. And so this first part follows their journey into getting their brother back and gaining some allies along the way.
What inspired this move? I mean, you're a professor, or?
Yeah, I'm an adjunct professor at Moraine.
And what is your, why don't you just say to them, what is your?
Behavioral science, so sociology and psychology. Usually I teach intro, so we cover a wide variety of current issues and modern day events. But I always really enjoyed writing as free time. Behavioral science gets you to think a lot about how people act, why they do what they do. It builds their personalities, it builds their character. And I personally don't think it's such a huge jump from seeing how people act with each other and the reasons they do things to building a character and thinking, how is this character going to act? Why are they going to do this? How are they going to interact with other people? What is the conflict going to be? So I like to use the background that I have in behavioral science and studies to build up my characters and write out the scenes and figure out why they do what they do. I think it's a different insight into the world of fiction writing, but it's definitely a useful one in the process.
Why young adult?
I actually really love young adult novels, even though I'm not really considered a young adult myself anymore. It's just something that you can get drawn into the story. You have some drama, you have some conflict, but it's not as heavy as I would say adult literature is. It's not something that's really dramatic and emotional to the point of where, you know, that you're not enjoying it anymore. You're just caught up to try and figure out what happens. So Young adult is something that's a little bit lighter. It catches you up in the story. It's a break from reality. You get to go into these fantasy worlds, like with Tolkien or Bruce Coville or James Howe. And you want to know what happens next, but it's on a lighter note. It's something that you can get caught up in and enjoy without feeling like, for example, in adult literature, when you're relating to a character in the story and it gets to this point where it's reminding you of things that have happened in your life and it doesn't get fun anymore, it's just more dramatic. Young adult is something you can read and enjoy and remember for years to come, but just a step out of your real world is what it is.
It should be noted that everybody can enjoy young adult.
Definitely.
It's written with the young adult audience in mind because young adults have the same kind of intellectual capacity that an adult has, but tend to like a different pacing, different urgency.
Exactly, definitely. I think young adult, like you said, is for everybody. I still read my favorite childhood authors, so that's something I think I'm always going to enjoy. I don't think you ever grow out of it. I just think as you grow up, you can appreciate the young adult literature even more.
So you mentioned a couple of authors that inspire you. Any others? Other titles?
Well, like I said, Bruce Coville and James Howe wrote a lot of my favorite books and series as a young individual. I want to say like 3rd grade, 4th grade. James Howe is very popular for the Bunnicula series, The Vampire Bunny, and it details his escapades with this talking dog and cat along the way, and it's a huge series. And Bruce Coville wrote the Book of Nightmares, Book of Monsters, Book of Ghosts. So I like that they were able to expand and do all of these different things with their literature. And like I said, something I was reading when I was 7 and 8 years old is still something I enjoy reading now. And to be honest, Bruce Coville's Books of Nightmares still kind of give me the goosebumps after 20 years of reading it. So I enjoy authors that don't just stick to one thing. I'm writing about a talking cat and dog, that's all I'm going to stick with. They can expand and touch other aspects. I also enjoy Dan Brown, The Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons. That's a little bit of a more realistic type of writing where these events could possibly happen along the way. So those are 3 authors that I really, really enjoy, and most recently Veronica Roth for the Divergent series as well.
Great. So you mentioned that this was born of stories that were told to you?
Yeah. To clarify, it wasn't really so much of a Humchis story. It was more of, if you don't listen, the Humchis going to come out from under the bed and eat you, and then you'll die, and that's it. It's just these funny stories that were meant to get us to listen when we were misbehaving. There was a lot of us growing up, my siblings and cousins, and so being scared to misbehave was a great way to keep us all in line. But I always remembered the monsters, so I said, why don't I actually write some stories instead of it just being a threat for our behavior? So.
And you mentioned that your real monster stories or real ghost stories or real horror stories?
Right. Yeah, real horror. It's going to be split between conventional horror, where there is going to be some ghosts and demons, and then part 2 of the book is going to follow some stories that I actually did case studies on when I was getting my master's in criminal profiling about people that just, snapped along the way and these horrific things that they do. And I think we become so desensitized to it when we're listening to the news and murders and rapes and kidnappings. We just hear it and it goes in one ear and right out the other, but it is horrible. This is something that we should be terrified of more than the monster under the bed. And so I like the juxtaposition of the scary stories that affected you as children versus the scary real life stories that affect us now in our everyday world. So it's been a little bit of an interesting and quite disturbing path for that because of some of the cases that I researched to do that collection of stories.
So that was inspired by your day profession.
Exactly.
But was this at all inspired by these creatures out of horror? At all inspired by your encounters or your studies?
I've based characters off of some people that I've known, some things that I've admired about them, some things that have maybe not scared, but disturbed me about aspects of personality. And so I've included that in the characters. But then I said, well, how am I going to put these characters that I've based off of experiences that I've had and make them work together? And so the Kingdom of Kusimak and the Humchis just kind of was a good place to put all the settings, to bring all of these different personality types and have a reason and a rationale for them all mingling and interacting with each other.
So you've mentioned this trilogy and the real horror stories, which sounds terrifying.
Great, that's exactly what I wanted to do.
Do you have any projection as far as where you want to go as a professional author?
Yeah, actually, I have something in the works, just starting out with the notes and outlining. In the academic world, it's called publish or perish. So to continue to have your name in academia, you have to continuously publish work, which I haven't done academically in a few years. And so I want to start by doing a collection of interviews with women of different racial and religious backgrounds, because I think women are the largest minority we have. It encompasses race, it encompasses religion, it encompasses ethnicity, working class, everything that we can possibly include in minority groups can be applied to this gender. And so I want to be launching, hopefully in the next few months, probably after the horror stories are done, interviews with women and their different experiences being female in the United States. And that's going to be a sociological perspective on one of the most undermined minority groups. That's as I feel. I say, okay, we talk about women versus men, but then we don't talk about you being a Hispanic woman or an African American woman or a woman of minority religion or from different social classes and the different biases and stereotypes that we experience with all of these other aspects, and being a gender that's been traditionally undermined in history. And so that is something I'm really looking forward to doing. However, I do want to finish the horror stories before I continue that, because that one's going to be hopefully a lengthy process, because I want it to be very detailed. So.
What does your writing process look like? Do you have a strategy?
Yeah.
A daily strategy?
Yeah, it's about 3 in the morning when everyone else is asleep and my phone finally stops ringing and all my other homework is done and the papers are graded, and I say, I could sleep or I could write for the next 5 hours. And I'll just sit and I'll type everything up, just dump it right from my brain right onto the computer, and then I'll go back and look at it and say, I want to change this, I want to add that, I want to do this. Sometimes I'll be at the grocery store or driving, which I don't recommend writing as you're driving, but leave myself a voice note and say, I decide I want to add this, and I visit it later. And then sometimes I don't want to look at it for 2 or 3 weeks because I'm tired and I'm frustrated. And then once again, I'll sit for 7 or 8 hours and write, just one day out of the blue. It's a very scattered, but in my head, I have it all organized the way I want it. I know what I say I'm going to write. It's probably going to be all of 4 days over a period of 3 months when we finally add everything up. But everything that happens, sometimes I'll bump into somebody and I'm like, that personality's funny. I want to add that. I want to base a character off this person. I want to add these quirks and things that bother me about people and put them in an evil character because it makes me feel better about myself. So all these different experiences I pull into the writing, but for normal people, I don't think it would seem very organized at all, to be honest. So
Normal people.
Normal people. Normal people don't stay awake and write at 3 in the morning until 7 when it's time to go to work. I don't think, but I don't think I've met many professional authors yet either, so I might find that this is actually quite normal for writers.
It seems to be very eclectic. Everybody has their own style.
Well, I don't drink and I don't smoke, so that's out of the way for some of the older professional authors, but still young. That's different influences that could happen along the way.
So what is all of this?
So this stuff, I've been writing book 2 for quite some time, because I debated on how long I wanted it to be. I debated on where I wanted it to end. You know, I wanted to include the biggest part of their adventure in part 2, but I didn't want to make it so there was really nothing left to write in the final installment of the trilogy. And so once I finally figured out where I wanted to end, I realized there's this huge part of their journey into this area called the dreamscape that they have to escape, which takes up a big part of book 2. And I'm a big fan of Etsy with handmade items. A lot of people do things inspired by The Hunger Games or Divergent or Harry Potter or Tolkien. And so I decided I have some great ideas to create some pieces inspired by book 2. And the excerpt, one of the excerpts I'll read today is from book 2, which actually is part of the chapter where they get these amulets and items, which we will see inspired here today. The Etsy store will be launching in probably the next 2 or 3 days, where people can purchase these. But today, if they're ordered, they will be at a discounted price. And I will also raffle off a couple of the items seen here today for free, as well as free editions of the second book. So these are all inspired by book 2. Amulets and little trinkets. They are sent on a quest to escape the dreamscape. And they're given a key, and they have to go through this ordeal and find out what the key is for in order to use it. So we see here the bracelets with the keys attached for each character. Each character has a special one, and it'll be read in the excerpt. They're put on a time limit, and they see these floating clocks telling them their time is ending, because if they don't complete the mission before the clock ends, then they're going to be stuck in this nightmare land forever. And so this inspired the keychains and the keys and these types of amulets and things like that. So I was really excited. These are all handmade by me. I spent the last couple of days making them myself. I used to take welding and metalworks in college just for fun. So I enjoyed doing it. Yeah.
So you're going to do a reading?
Yes. I will do 2, a short one from the book that's currently out, and then a short one from book 2. The people that I've had read it so far have been like, is the book out yet? I want to buy it. So I think this is a really great chapter to read to you guys. But first, obviously, I would like to introduce you to it, how the Humchis came to be, which would give you a good basis for these monsters before going on to the excerpt from book 2. All right. So, do you want me to just go ahead and
You do reading and then take questions.
Definitely. So, in the Humchis book, part 1, Journey into Kusimak, I set up how they were created, how they came about, and lay out the setting that serves as a backdrop for the Humchi Kingdom, which will come later in book 1 and a lot more in detail in book 2 when we start to visit the backgrounds of these peoples and creatures in this fantasy world. So it's just a couple of pages detailing how exactly what the chapter says, how the Humchis came to be. During times of great turmoil amongst the humans, when their hatred and evil intentions were rampant on earth as well as in heaven, a dark and powerful race of beings arose from the blackness. Some say that this race was bred by the humans themselves, to use as weapons, shock troops, against their enemies, and that they escaped and ran off into the wilderness. Perhaps the most terrifying, and yet the most logical explanation for these beings of immense power was that they were already in existence. They were so evil and twisted that they shunned traditional ways of the world and retreated into darkness and faint memories to breed amongst themselves, to strengthen their bloodlines, and create a vast and corrupt army with which they would thwart the humans. It has often been wondered what these beings, these Humchis, were before they turned. But There can only be one race that had the possibility to morph and evolve into such a sinister force, the humans themselves. The Humchis are a vile and terrible lot. They would have killed each other numerous times if they were not kept in check by the one being stronger than themselves, the Humchi King. A being more horrifying one could not find. Immensely powerful, he drew on the strength of all the Humchis, which made him the largest, the fastest, the strongest of them all. If the king were to be slain, all the Humchis would feel it. They would be weakened almost beyond repair. And so, they protected their king, as much out of fear of him as out of fear for him. His insatiable appetite was what eventually led to the Humchis' infiltration of human civilizations. They came seeking food for their king, who was hungry, always hungry. A legion of Humchi warriors is a most fearsome thing to behold. They are giant beings, their size almost doubling the size of an average human, with a shoulder span to match. Hairy, with a bent, loping gait, they use their arms like gorillas to speed up their approach. They carry long, wickedly sharp knives carved from the bones of enemies that have fallen before them. They wear little gear, as their naturally blue reptilian skin is tougher than most man-made armor. Their eyes are perhaps the most terrifying of all. Ranging anywhere in color from a deep blood red to a haunting orange glow, they can be seen through the darkness long before the army emerges. Their claws spring out of taloned hands and feet like a jungle cat. Their fangs protrude from their mouths, dripping saliva and venom, for the bite of a Humchi paralyzes its prey upon contact, and is always at the ready. They come bringing with them devastation and the unmistakable stench of decay. For the Humchis are unlike any other being on Earth. They operate solely in the darkness and thrive off of rotten dead things. They do not care for cooked food or clean water, nor is any of it any great importance if the earth withers and dies around them. They grow stronger as their surroundings grow weaker, feeding on death and evil until there is nothing left to consume. And then they move on. Out of fear of the king, his army of servants ventured out of the land of Kusimak and converged towards an area that seemed full of life and energy. This would be the perfect spot for them to find food for their king, the land of the humans. And so that introduces how the conflict between mankind and the Humchis started. And it starts from a period about 200 years ago and then jumps to modern times where the adventure with Xander, Maria, and Marcus begins. And it goes on and details their adventures through Kusimak. And then when they meet their new ally, Hob, who is the namesake for part 2 of the trilogy, The Chronicles of Hob, they come upon these other adventures trying to get out of the Humchi kingdom and back to their home, which is quite a lengthier process than it took to get into it. And it's the whole part of book 2, which I have an excerpt as well from when they finally start their trek through the dreamscape, which is this nightmare realm where, just like any types of dreams or things you may have, if anyone's ever had the dream where they're in slow motion, no matter how fast they try to go, things are chasing them, things are floating around. This is the dreamscape. It's a living nightmare. And the only way to escape is to complete these missions that the witch that's in charge of the dreamscape has created for them. From her end, it's amusement because she doesn't feel that this group of travelers is ever going to escape. And on their end, it's the only way they're ever going to escape. It's Marcus, Maria, and Xander. It's several of their allies, Kanem, Hob, and Nefus as well. And so it's really interesting to see their adventure, but this part is just what is leading up to their trek into the dreamscape that I'm going to read right now. They all stood stock still, each one not daring to look at the others. Mabaya had something up her sleeve. That was very clear. What it was, however, was something none of them could fathom. Mabaya finished her cackling and fixed her rheumy eyes on the group. "I will let you pass through my domain unharmed," she began, in her nasally voice. "But you must earn it." And with that, she snapped her fingers and began to caper about the cavern, chanting and humming in her strange, garbled tongue. Without warning, they all seized up, as if an invisible fist had clamped over their bodies. Kanem and Hob began to thrash, trying to gain control of their arms at least. Only Nefus stayed still. He stood there with his eyes closed, breathing deeply. His calm, collected voice spoke to them through their panic. Relax, he soothed. It's too soon for her to hurt us. She's prepping us for her game. We won't get hurt just yet. No sooner had he spoken these words than lights began to spark and pop around them in a flurry of motion, and Mabaya disappeared. Then, all of a sudden, it stopped. Looking down at their bodies, each of them found that they had some sort of metallic bracelet around their wrists. Xander lifted his for a closer look. There was a key dangling from his chain. Looking over, he noticed Maria was staring at her own bracelet, equipped with its own key. Upon closer inspection, Maria noticed that there was an inscription on hers. Squinting in the dim light, she saw what it said, Heart. They all huddled together to read their own inscriptions. Hobbs said, Secret, Nefus, Journey, Marcus is read, Dreams, Canam's Life, and Xander's Memory. While they puzzled over what this meant, Mabaya's voice floated in the air around them. You are each in possession of one item that will aid you in your escape from my dreamscape. Together they will unlock the seventh door to freedom, but you must each go through your own trials first. In this way you may earn your right to stand before the seventh door beyond the Hall of Mirrors. Only then will you be allowed to leave at one final cost. You mean we have to split up? Xander yelled. Marcus moved to protest that he was not a child and he could go on his own, and Maria shushed him. Mabaya's voice responded, Suit yourself, young ones, but know this, your trials may not be completed together. If you stay together, you will never have the chance to escape my dreamscape again. Hold on just a minute, witch, Canaan began. You mean to send us into this dreamscape with no direction or knowledge, and you want to split us up? This seems like a ploy. Hob had stayed quiet up until this point, but now she spoke. Striding forward, she turned and gazed at the group, at her friends. This is the only way. Whether we like it or not, we have no other choice in the matter. We can all die together or try to survive apart. If we succeed, we can leave. Isn't that a chance worth taking? Xander sighed and nodded his agreement. Canaan seemed annoyed, but he too nodded his consent. Hob sighed in relief and then looked over at Nefus. So, you seem to have learned several handy new tricks that you've kept hidden from me. Anything we can use? Nefus smiled his crooked smile and looked at the group. I can discern more along the way of our trials, but this I can do for you now. Each of you has so much to offer, and I fear that we tend to underestimate ourselves in the worst of times. I can provide each of us with a token that will serve as a reminder and core of power for our strengths. Lifting his left hand over his cupped right palm, he began to chant. Compared to Mabaya's sinister chanting, Nefus sounded peaceful and soothing. As he chanted, a soft glow emanated from his palm, then quickly receded. When he was done, he presented each of the travelers with two round, flat discs. Each of them had a word on it. Hobbs, for example, said significant and unique, and Marcus says journey and lifetime. Nefus closed his palm over his own before anyone could read them. Wonderful, cried Canaan as he affixed his to his bracelet. The witch wants to send us on a death trip, and the Falahan wants to present me with jewelry. At least I'll die fashionably. Nefus did not seem to be bothered. Trust me, Humchis. You do not know the power that the words wield. I do. Plus, he added with a mischievous grin, your bracelet matches beautifully with your weaponry. Canaan guffawed loudly before he could control himself, and the rest of the group broke out in fits of laughter. The lighthearted moment was interrupted, however, by the booming voice of Mabaya. If you have decided to accept the trials, it is time to take leave of each other. In the middle of the cavern, doors shimmered into being out of thin air in front of each of them, and Mabaya's voice spoke out once more. One more thing, my little adventurers. I forgot to mention that you have a time limit, 3 days. Not 1 second more or 1 second less. If you fail to complete the trial in this allotted time, you will be my servants forever. Something glittered into focus, floating in front of each person's face. A small clock, ticking away the minutes, with a small carrying pouch floating next to it. They all quickly grabbed their timepieces and hastily shoved them into pockets and bags. Looking sideways at each other one last time, they each grabbed the doorknob in front of them, opened it, and stepped into the blackness beyond.
So this stuff does make sense now?
Yes, now it makes sense.
The little clock faces? And
Their clocks, their keys, the discs that hold the power that Nefus was telling them about. This ends up being the key to the seventh door that they are meant to go through beyond the Hall of Mirrors after they complete their trials. This is a cover of Book 2, Hob, Chronicles of Hob. She's a huge character, and The first part of book 2 details the Falahan, their trials and tribulations with the Humchis, and why she has decided to leave her people behind to aid these travelers and this Humchi, her mortal enemy, in their quest to find their way home.
Please read the book.
Yes, please. This will answer a lot of your questions, and I hope that the readings I gave left you wanting more explanations, but that's exactly what they're meant to do. So, I guess Q&A?
Yep, any questions?
Questions or anything? Go ahead.
I know that the books are available here, but where else, like if I was gonna read it and then someone else liked it, I don't wanna give up my book. Where
Right.
could I refer them to get their own?
They're available on Amazon. You can get them for the iPad, for the Kindle, for the Nook. You can get it on Google Play. Blurb.com offers hardcover editions, although since Blurb is a privately owned company and corporation, they are more expensive. Amazon will sell it for about $15. Besides the discounts and sales they'll have every so often. But the hardcover version is something around $25, $30, which also features a different cover. This one shows the Humchis. The hardcover edition is simply black with a pair of glowing eyes like we see here in the bookmarks. And it's just got the title. So it's a little bit of a different with the dust cover and things like that. But basically on any type of medium you can assume. If you don't have one of the brand name tablets like the Kindle, iPad, Nook, things like that, you can get the PDF version on Blurb for $9. And it will give you a PDF so you can upload it to any other type of tablet you get at Best Buy that's not one of the name brand ones as well, and also on your smartphones. So I think I covered all the bases with where you can get them. I made sure that whatever you have, whether you want to read it online or you only have a phone or you want to order it, you can pretty much get it anywhere. And hopefully Barnes & Noble and main retailers in the next year or so, hopefully. Any other questions or comments or things like that?
We're gonna do a signing.
Yes, we will have a signing. The books are $11. With the book, you get a free bookmark, and you get one raffle ticket as well. You may buy additional raffle tickets for 50 cents a piece. And they will, after the end of everyone buying and the signing, I will host a raffle for some of you to win free items. The rest of you that I draw from the raffle, I think about 3 or 4 people, will get free versions, free signed versions of book 2 that's coming out in a few weeks. For those of you, after I call your raffle, you will need to provide me with some sort of contact information so that I can deliver the book to you. You may also choose to order these as of today. If you don't win them in the raffle, you may still order a piece and I will make one to your specifications. Usually the bracelets are about $10. Today, for those of you that have showed up today, you may order them for $7. You may order the keychains for $3. You may order the necklaces for $10. And once again, leave me with contact information so I can ship it to you along the way. And you will also get just a little slip of paper with different ways to contact me: Twitter, Vine, Snapchat, all of the different mediums that I'm going to be using to promote book 2 and the rest of the books coming out. And if you have any other questions or concerns about ordering or things like that, please let me know. I have receipts, so when we write out your order, you'll get one part, I'll get the other. So I'll have all that information, and you can take this for tax purposes and things like that if you so need.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. The next book signing is Monday, October 20th at the Homer Township Public Library. It's actually an author panel. There's going to be 10 authors, including myself, talking about Q&A for their horror stories and their processes as well. So it's not just me, but it's 9 other locally based authors as well that you can come out to support. Not only will that book be up for sale, the horror stories, which is called Bump in the Night, also I will be selling the rest of the merchandise there as well. So that'll be a great time because they do a festival in October and showcase community work. So that'll be fun as well.
Very good.
Thank you so much.